The recreation dome of Station Kepler 442b hummed with the sounds of laughter and play, but Liza stood apart from it all. Her translucent blue skin shimmered under the artificial sunlight, and her large opalescent eyes tracked the movements of other children as they ran through the holographic meadows and splashed in the synthetic streams. The Zephyrian girl pressed herself against the curved wall, her four-fingered hands clasped behind her back, watching but never participating. The other alien children, a mix of species from across the Galactic Council, played together in loose groups. Crystalline Vorthak younglings chimed melodically as they constructed geometric patterns in the sand. Furry Mokari cubs tumbled and wrestled with natural grace. Even the typically reserved Theta Centauri adolescents had formed a quiet circle, sharing thoughts through their telepathic link. But none approached Liza. They never did. It wasn't malicious, she told herself. It was simply natural. Zephyrians were rare this far from their homeworld, and her species' emotional sensitivity made others uncomfortable. She could feel their unease like a physical weight, their uncertainty about how to interact with someone who might accidentally absorb their feelings or project her own onto them. James Rodriguez had been watching the alien girl for 3 days now. The 12-year-old human had arrived on Kepler Station with his xenobiologist mother just a week ago, and while the other human children had quickly integrated with the mixed groups, something about the blue-skinned girl's isolation had caught his attention. "She's always alone," he murmured to himself, adjusting his position on the observation deck that overlooked the recreation dome. His mother had explained that the station hosted children from 17 different species, all living together while their parents worked on the massive research facility. It was supposed to be a model of interspecies cooperation and understanding. Yet there was Liza day after day watching but never joining in. James had done his research. The station's database was freely accessible to residents, and he'd learned about Zephyrians, their empathic abilities, their cultural emphasis on emotional harmony, their deep capacity for both joy and sorrow. He'd also learned that they were considered one of the most emotionally intelligent species in the galaxy, capable of understanding and relating to the feelings of almost any sentient being. So why was she alone? Today, James made a decision. Instead of heading to the main play area where the other human children were engaged in a game of zero-gravity capture the flag, he descended to the lower level where Liza stood in her usual spot. She noticed him approaching immediately. Zephyrians had excellent peripheral vision, and her posture tensed slightly. James could see her preparing to move away, as she always did when anyone came too close. "Hi," James said simply, stopping about 3 meters away. Close enough to talk, far enough to not crowd her. "I'm James. I've seen you here before." Liza's large eyes fixed on him with surprise. Most beings who addressed her did so with either exaggerated caution or uncomfortable formality. This human boy's tone was casual, friendly, but not forced. Yes, I come here often." Her voice carried the melodic quality typical of her species, with subtle harmonics that conveyed emotion alongside words. James could hear the wariness there, but also something else, a tiny note of hope. "Do you like watching the games?" James asked, genuinely curious. "I do." Liza's answer was soft. "Your species plays differently than others, more chaotically creative. It's interesting." James grinned. "Chaotically creative, I like that. Way better than what my mom calls it, barely controlled mayhem." He paused, studying her expression. "But watching isn't the same as playing, is it?" Something shifted in Liza's emotional signature. James couldn't sense it the way another Zephyrian might, but her body language spoke volumes. Her shoulders drooped slightly. They don't know how to play with me. My people. We feel things differently. Stronger. And sometimes those feelings..." She gestured vaguely with one hand. "They can affect others. It makes them uncomfortable." "Affect them how?" "If I'm happy, really happy, others might start feeling happy too, even if they weren't before. If I'm sad or scared, those emotions can spread. It's not intentional, but..." She shrugged. It's easier for everyone if I just watch. James considered this. So you're basically a walking mood enhancer? I suppose that's one way to put it. That's actually pretty cool. James's enthusiasm was genuine, and Liza could sense it clearly. I mean, think about it. If you're having fun, everyone around you has more fun too, right? But what if I'm not having fun? What if I'm nervous or sad? Then maybe they'd understand how you're feeling and try to help. James took a step closer. Look, I get that it's complicated, but you know what I think? Liza shook her head. I think you've been protecting everyone else for so long, you forgot that maybe some of us don't need protecting. Maybe some of us would rather share the good feelings and help with the bad ones than miss out on knowing you entirely. For a long moment, Liza stared at him. James could see something working behind her opalescent eyes, some internal struggle between hope and fear. Would you like to try playing something together? She asked hesitantly. I thought you'd never ask. James's grin was infectious, literally in this case. Liza felt her own lips curve upward in response, and a warm feeling of anticipation began to bloom in her chest. They started simple. James taught her a human game called 20 Questions, where one person thought of something and the other tried to guess it. Liza was remarkably good at it, her empathic abilities giving her subtle clues about whether she was on the right track. But instead of feeling like cheating, it felt like a natural part of who she was, a gift to be shared rather than hidden. As they played, other children began to notice. The Makari cubs were the first to approach, drawn by the genuine laughter echoing from their corner of the dome. Then the Vorthak younglings, their crystalline bodies chiming with curiosity. Soon a small group had formed around them. What's the game? Asked a young Theta Centauri, her mental voice carrying interested overtones. James looked at Liza, letting her decide whether to include the others. The Zephyrian girl felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but underneath it was something new, a steady warmth of acceptance and encouragement emanating from the human boy beside her. It's called 20 Questions, Liza said, her voice growing stronger. Would you like to learn? As the afternoon progressed, their small group grew into a larger gathering. Liza found herself at the center of it all, not as an outsider looking in, but as an integral part of the fun. Her natural empathic abilities, rather than driving others away, seemed to help the diverse group of children understand each other better. When the Vorthak younglings felt frustrated by the language barriers, Liza's emotional resonance helped bridge the gap. When the Makari cubs became overly excited, her calming influence helped maintain harmony. But most importantly, when Liza laughed, really truly laughed, the joy that radiated from her was infectious in the best possible way. It lifted spirits, brightened moods, and created a bubble of pure happiness that encompassed them all. James watched it all with quiet satisfaction. He'd seen something the others had missed. Liza hadn't needed to change to fit in. She'd needed someone to help her realize that her differences weren't flaws to be hidden, but gifts to be celebrated. As the dome's artificial sun began to set, signaling the end of the recreation period, the group reluctantly began to disperse, but not before making plans to meet again tomorrow and the day after that. Thank you, Liza said to James as they walked toward the exit. Her emotional signature was complex now. Gratitude, happiness, and something deeper. A sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. For what? James asked. For seeing me instead of just my differences. For showing me that being different doesn't have to mean being alone. James smiled. That's what humans do best, I think. We're pretty good at bringing out the best in others. He paused. Besides, now I've got the best partner for 20 questions in the entire galaxy. That's got to count for something. Liza's laughter filled the corridor, and for the first time in her life, she didn't try to contain it. The joy flowed freely, touching everyone they passed, leaving small smiles and lightened hearts in their wake. Tomorrow there would be new games to learn, new friends to make, and new ways to discover that differences weren't barriers. They were bridges waiting to be built. And at the center of it all would be a Zephyrian girl who had finally learned that her gift for feeling deeply wasn't something to hide from the world. It was something to share with it.